Hello, thank you all for joining us today at this joint press conference between PureCycle Technologies and Milliken and Company. I know you are all curious about the new announcement that's going to be unveiled today, and also to find out what has been going on with this partnership. But before we get into that, let me introduce you to my two guests up here. So with me I have Dustin Olson, CEO of PureCycle Technologies, and beside him I have Wim van der Velde, Global Vice President of Plastic Additives at Milliken. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's been 3 years since we sat down together. In fact, it was at the K-Show in 2019 that both of these companies shared with us what their partnership was and what their goals were going to be out of it. So let's start with you, Dustin. What has happened in these last 3 years?
Thank you for the question. Thanks everybody for coming today. We appreciate the attention and the time to get to know us a little bit better. Actually, I've been with the company now for 2 years, and as I was getting ready for that question, I had to think back as to what we actually discussed at the last K-Show. And actually, at that point, we had just started up our feedstock evaluation unit. And so that was the pilot scale facility that proved the overall theory, the concept on a continuous basis. And we were actually able to bring samples from our plant during the last K-Show, and it was a big hit. But since then, it's like, my gosh, there's been so many things that have happened to our company over the last 3 years. We've continued to work the FEU and optimized it. We do many things with it. We test and trial and qualify new feeds. We test the process boundaries of the operating conditions, and then we make as many samples as possible to give to our customers so they can make new great things out of it. Since the K-Show, we have fully financed our operation in Ironton, Ohio. That's the scale facility, the first scaled facility for PureCycle. It's actually mechanically complete. It's due to be mechanically complete at the end of Q4. We're still fighting through a few last-minute supply chain items, but we're still basically on track for that. And by the way, that's quite amazing, actually, because we defined that date 3 years ago, before COVID, before inflation, before supply chain. Our team's done a great job to hold that schedule. Our partnerships have continued to grow. You know, people like Milliken have been a strong supporter of ours for many years, and the depth of relationship with our strategics has been great with P&G, Milliken, L'Oreal, Aptar, as well as our suppliers like KMPS, Koch Modular, Kraus Maffei, Denim & Blythe, and Gulfspan. Emerson also, we unveiled last year a new program called Born Digital, and it's really the way that we are building our facilities. Anytime you get to start with a blank sheet of paper, you get to do it the way you really want to. You don't have to worry about transforming old systems. You get to build it right out of the gate, and that's Emerson. We've become publicly listed. PCO is on the NASDAQ. We've announced a new cluster facility in Augusta, Georgia, that will have the capacity of up to 1 billion pounds of production per year. We've announced a couple of JVs, one with Mitsui and also another with SKGC. And actually, I'm very proud to announce, we'll talk about it in a bit more detail later, but proud to announce that last night we signed the definitive agreement for a JV in South Korea, in Ulsan, South Korea, with SKGC. And we're very excited about that partnership and where it takes us. It really gives us our first entree into Asia, which is obviously a big and growing market. We've done a lot of the simple blocking and tackling items like ESG report and LCA analysis. Those all turned out very well. We've deepened our bench from a technical perspective. Lots of new product applications, process design. But then ultimately, the biggest, let's say, goal that we have in sight is to get the Ironton facility up and operational, and we are closing in on that as we speak. So a lot has happened since the last K-Show for PureCycle.
One of the things I've been hearing over and over is how your solution is a no-compromise solution. What does that mean? Why is that important?
Yeah, so PureCycle is a really unique product, okay? You know, if you look at the overall metrics for the plastic industry, there's about 500 billion pounds per year produced plastic around the world. About a third of that is polypropylene, maybe a little bit less. So you get to numbers of around 175 to 200 billion pounds of polypropylene each year. And less than 10% is recycled. And so why is the recycling rate so low for polypropylene? And it's really because it's such a good molecule. Polypropylene is the most adaptable. It's one of the lightest. It can be used across many applications. And because it has so many shapes, sizes, colors, odors, qualities, it's difficult to recycle. What we do is we do a fundamental, it's almost like a dry cleaning for the molecule. Okay, so it's like we take the molecule through a system and we wash all of the contaminants away, and we don't depolymerize, so we don't destroy the molecule, we keep it intact, but we wash away all the dyes, all the talc, all of the additives, all of the rubbers, all the things that are needed to make polypropylene really good. We wash all that away and bring back effectively the virgin polypropylene again. And so when we say no compromise, what we mean is the customer doesn't have to compromise. The customer doesn't have to make micro adjustments for color or odor. They don't have to smash it between two layers. They can just use it like it's a fossil-based PP solution. And that gives us a great advantage in the marketplace.
And Vim, I know no compromise is also a big deal for Milliken. What does it mean for you guys?
Yeah, so for us it basically means three things. One is that the converters, so those who actually use the PureCycle resin, don't need to adjust their machines, so don't need to do tweaks. They can basically use it as fossil-based polypropylene. Second is that it's a high-quality product, high-quality premium product. And third is that you have a good carbon footprint. Well, for us, the PureCycle technology actually fulfills those three criteria.
Yeah, and maybe if I could add to that, I appreciate that entry, because from a carbon footprint perspective, one of the advantages that the PureCycle product brings is that because we are not depolymerizing, because we are not breaking down the molecule, we don't need to use catalyst, we don't need to use a lot of heat. We basically just adjust the condition of the polymer so it's different from the rest and we can wash it away. And what that results in is a carbon footprint relative to fossil-based polypropylene. We are a 35% reduction relative to fossil-based PP on carbon footprint, or an 80% energy reduction relative to fossil, and water, we're nearly flat. And by the way, that is using near nameplate capacity for our plant, and we know we've over-designed it, so we know we're going to run the machines at a lower rate. And that's also using coal as the primary feed source for our operation. And we did that because there's so much noise in the system around how to calculate a life cycle analysis that we just wanted to be fully transparent and say, look, in our first facility, Ironton, it's got a heavy coal-based supply. And so we're going to use that as our reference, which is why the carbon footprint isn't as low as what it could be with other types of energy. So.
Okay. Speaking of sustainable solutions, I know there is a big announcement that you guys want to share today. Wim, do you want to tell our media here what has come out?
Yes, so we're announcing that actually today that we are going to develop, or actually we're going to commercialize a concentrate, a clarifying concentrate, 100% based on the PureCycle technology. So what does this do for customers? Basically the customers, right? They can buy the PureCycle resin, the technology, from 100% recycled resource. On top of that, typically concentrates, these clarifying concentrates are added in a ratio between 1 to 2%. So also that basically that concentrate will be 100% based on PureCycle resin. And on top of that, the clarifying agent in there, the Milliken X8000, allows for another 8% of energy reduction and also reduction in the CO2 emissions. So as an overall, as a customer, right, it gives you a very low carbon footprint sustainable solution.
And we're very excited about this. If you think about how plastic is made, you have your base resin, and then you always add 2 to 3% additive to that base resin. And Milliken has been, first of all, they've been a fantastic partner of ours for the last 3 to 5 years, really helping us a lot develop new products, and they're extremely strong technically. But if if you put an additive package into a fully recycled product, you're always going to have like 3% that comes from fossil-based PP. But with this solution, because our product is 100% recycled, all of a sudden we can really close the chain on full circularity. Now even the recycled products, when using this additive package from Milliken, can have 100% circularity, not missing that last 3%. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, Vim, I see you nodding in agreement there.
I 100% agree with Dustin, yes.
Yes, yeah. How is this new concentrate really going to help with people's sustainability goals?
So if you look at recycling, right, then actually mechanical recycling is the solution with the lowest carbon footprint. The problem with mechanical recycling is its limitations in use after it's being recycled. Typically limitations because of either food contact approvals, but also, for example, transparency. So what happens a lot is basically you go from, let's say, a high premium packaging plastic to a lower product like, for example, buckets, pails, maybe into bumpers, etc. So it's basically you don't have 100% full circularity. Well, the PureCycle technology already, just as Dustin mentioned, right, with its reduction in basically greenhouse gas emissions and also the lower energy use, well, allows for basically a total full circularity, right? So basically the combination of the PureCycle resin and then also the concentrate, right, with the additive in there, allows them for a full circular package. And maybe Dustin, maybe you can elaborate also a little bit more on the food contact status of the PureCycle resin.
Yeah, we're actually doing a lot of work on the FDA status for our product, and we've partnered, not so much partnered, but working collaboratively with the FDA to get the right food grade qualifications. But fundamentally, because what we're doing is washing the contaminants away from the molecule at a very fundamental level, it gives us the opportunity to achieve levels of food contact qualification that others are not able to get. And so we're definitely in that process of, let's say, recycling and iterating to get to the full suite of solutions for the FDA, but our anticipation is to have full food contact capability across a wide range of feedstocks.
Vim had been talking about a little bit about mechanical recycling, but I know PureCycle isn't it's mechanical recycling, but it's advanced mechanical recycling. What does that mean?
Well, so maybe we'll survey the room after this to find out what classification we should fall into, because we don't know. Okay, we're not mechanical, we're not chemical, we are fill in the blank. Some people call us advanced recycling, some people call us advanced chemical recycling, some people call us advanced mechanical recycling. There's just not a good bucket for us to fall into, and that's making it difficult from a terminology perspective, also a regulatory perspective, because from a legislative process perspective, we typically legislate within the buckets that have been previously defined. But PureCycle is unique because we don't do depolymerization like with some of the chemical recycling techniques. We don't just dilute the product away like in some of the mechanical recycling techniques. We're like an advanced mechanical or an advanced chemical where we wash the molecule at the fundamental level. So, you know, I would say that as the industry grows, we have to be very careful here, because if we land on the wrong terminology that gives the wrong indication to the customer, to the consumer, to the general public, then we run the risk of, let's say, polluting the ideas or meshing too many of the concepts together when there are discrete differences. I mean, PureCycle is unique because we don't dilute it away, because we fundamentally wash the dyes, the colors, the dyes, the odors, the rubbers, the talcs away. We for sure do not depolymerize, so that's a big difference. And when you look at our process, the molecule of polypropylene that comes in is effectively the molecule of polypropylene that leaves, which means our yield is extremely high. So when you compare our process to some of the others out there, we certainly achieve product quality, as you can see behind us, product quality that's just really superb. Really good clarity, cleanliness, color. But on top of that, we show circularity like most processes don't, especially on the chemical side. We show a molecule coming in equals a molecule coming out. without the yield questions that other technologies have. And there's a lot of debate on that, especially around chemical recycling, specifically around pyrolysis. In Europe, pyrolysis is not considered recycling. In the US, pyrolysis is getting defined, but those processes are very different from what we do, and therefore we have to get the terminology just right.
It's interesting. You're shaping the future a little bit in this area.
I think, I don't know, Vim, I feel like it's a very exciting time to be working in this industry because it's exciting and it's also very challenging. Everything's changing every day. And so you've really got to be into the day-to-day. You really got to watch what's happening on a day-to-day basis because it changes so quickly. But that also brings a lot of excitement because in many ways, what we do today will shape where we are in the future, and having a voice at the table for that discussion is, I think, it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the new concentrate that's coming out and how it's going to play a role in the future of sustainability and how the technologies are working together. The next question I know everyone's wondering is, when is it going to be on the market?
Yeah, so it's going to be available in line with the Augusta ramp-up, and we will be basically starting to sample in the beginning of next year. It's going to be also available both, we plan to make it available both in the Americas, so North and South America, as well as in Europe as a first step, so not in Asia Pacific.
Okay. There's some new concentrate. This is a great example of how a partnership can work well together. And you both kind of hinted that you're shaping the future, that things are changing, new ideas coming out, the technologies are working well together. Would you say that this is a partnership that keeps on building?
Let me take a crack at that because as a young company, we have to learn how to crawl before we can walk, before we can run. And so in the early days of PureCycle, we were just trying to scratch it out and make it work. And we heavily relied on partners like Milliken to help us get there. And we didn't have a technical bench when we started, and so Milliken helped us. We don't have the expertise on the, let's say, fundamental additive level to get to where we need to be. Milliken helped us. We didn't know what we were going to have to do to our final product after we made it from different feedstocks, so we knew we needed to have a good additive partner. And so in many ways, I mentioned the strategic partnerships, Milliken being one. There are several others that I mentioned as well, least of which would be Procter & Gamble, kind of the partnership that helped us get started. But for sure, over the last 3 years, the relationship with Milliken has been very strong. And for sure, we have been able to accelerate our ability to develop products and technology through the partnership with Milliken. And for me personally, first I want to say thank you. But also, I see this as something that's just a foundation that we're going to continue to grow from.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe let me add something to this. One important thing also, thank you, Dustin, by the way, for the nice words. One thing which is also important is that by converting basically from a virgin, right, polypropylene to a PureCycle-based, whatever type of recycle it is, right, helps us actually to reduce our Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions in line with our basically science-based target initiatives and commitments we've made, which were announced also by our CEO on Wednesday.
Okay. If you think about the potential of a partnership like this or the potential of a product line like this, if the PureCycle technology is able to take waste polypropylene, wash it sufficiently that we get near fossil polypropylene, in some cases better than fossil polypropylene type qualities, it has a real opportunity to disrupt the way that the flow of polypropylene happens around the world. It becomes much more local. It reduces the supply chain. And I think that as we find different feeds to bring in, to test, to purify, to make new products out of, that final step of additive injection to enhance the quality of the final product, it's really important. And we probably don't say enough about what do additives actually do in the world of plastic, but additives make plastic better. Additives make plastic more clear, less foggy, better UV protectant, less static, less yellowing, all these things. And so as we start to really learn how to deal with waste polypropylene and how to manage our final product at the end, we have to really understand how to use the additives most effectively in that process.
Yeah, you guys have done so much. It's hard to believe that it's only been 3 years since this partnership has started. There's so many things that have come out already. So to summarize, this partnership works because of the high quality additives that Milliken delivers, the technology that's provided, and the aligned vision that you both had when the partnership joined. Did I capture it all?
I would say that this partnership works because Milliken had vision at the beginning to see how a process like this could really change the game of plastic recycling. Milliken had depth in order to support us from a technical perspective very well. And then I think both companies were open-minded and willing to partner together to just try to find something new and better. And I think between those three things is really what's helped to amplify what we've done together.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add to that, it's we've been looking at this problem like I think most people in the industry is okay. How can we basically try to solve this problem where you wanna, and sorry for the word, let's call it mechanical recycling. You wanna basically push as much mechanical recycling as you can, right? Well, the limitations, as I already said before, the limitations around both food contact and transparency have always been a big issue. Well, the PureCycle technology, and I think that was also the vision, I think, from the PureCycle team is like, look, if we can fix that problem, right, and then of course, in combination with additives use, well, that's gonna be a big deal. And so we truly believe in this technology. We also believe it's gonna be part of a solution, right, for a big problem out there. And I think it's also actually gonna be game-changing, in my opinion, for the next 10 years in the plastic industry.
Yeah, I agree. So we talked a little bit about what has happened in the last 3 years. Let's talk a little bit what's going to happen in the future. So over to you, Dustin. What's next for PureCycle?
So we mentioned a little bit of the ramp-up plan that Vim talked to. Obviously we're going to have to commercialize the product and get it coming at scale in order to do this project together. So the first step for us is to get Ironton up running and at capacity. We anticipate being mechanically complete Q4, Q1, depending on a couple of supply chain items, and then ramping throughout next year. Right behind that, we have our Augusta project. We've made several announcements over the last year and a half around Augusta. It's a really fantastic site. It's a really good community, in the kind of the center of the Southeast United States. So we're very excited about that. But beyond that, it's about growth internationally. And we haven't mentioned much about Europe, but we are actively looking at what we want to do in Europe in terms of where do we want to be and how do we want to scale. I mentioned 2 JVs that we have announced last year, one with Mitsui. It was an MOU to start there, and then also with SK. And with SK, we have really been able to accelerate forward through that process. SK is a really I'm going to say visionary company as well. They see where the world is going from a sustainability perspective. They're really building a nice ecosystem for how to solve this problem holistically, and they're very good technically. And so for us, they were a very natural partner to get started in Asia with because they check all the boxes for us. And as I mentioned last night, we actually, over some Korean barbecue, signed the final documents for our definitive agreement for the JV, and are very excited to move forward there. We've actually been out to the site. It's graded. It's just a bunch of dirt out there and ready for a new plant, and we're very excited to move forward with SK. We anticipate the facility to come online in 2025. It'll be in a location called Ulsan, South Korea. It'll be embedded into their broader, let's say manufacturing complex. But more so than that, I think the relationship with SK is beyond just the capacity. It's technical support, it's global collaboration, It's an entry into Asia, which should lead to more and more and more in Asia. And it's a partnership over the last year and a half where we've developed a lot of trust with one another. And so we're very, very excited to continue moving forward with SK as well as others. I mean, at the end of the day, we believe in our technology. We believe in our ability to change the world through a fully circular solution that brings a no compromise solution available to the customers. And so we're going to be very active in the global stage in growing our asset footprint.
Okay, so you mentioned the US, plants going there. You mentioned Asia, things are growing there. Europe, when is things going to happen here?
So we're really not prepared to make too many announcements in Europe at this point. The European landscape is quite a lot different. It's more advanced when it comes to sortation and capability on the collection side. And so we're working the feedstock discussions in Europe right now. And then we're also looking at where we would like to build this facility. That's probably an announcement that'll come in the future. And we're also building our team. Okay, remember, we're a pre-revenue startup. And so 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we had like 6 people. Okay, and today we have many more than that. But part of our growth plan is really finding the right people to grow the business. And we're starting to build our European team now. And hopefully over the next couple months, we'll have some nice announcements to make there.
Okay, we'll be looking forward to that. Wim, what's next for Milliken?
Yeah, so as an overall industry, right, we're faced with this enormous challenge around recycling. Well, our president, our CEO, basically, right, announced on Wednesday our commitment to get to net zero by SBTI, basically validated by SBTI by 2050. Well, PureCycle, for example, right, and all the initiatives and our cooperations with PureCycle is a part of that because it helps also to reduce Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions for Milliken. So we will continue to work with partnerships like those to try to indeed help to improve the world around recycling and advance recycling a bit further and actually reduce our environmental impact on the planet.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about what PureCycle is going to be doing. We talked about your scaling. We talked about what Milliken's going to be doing. Where does the partnership go from here? Wim?
So we announced today basically the first concentrate, which is a clarifying concentrate, like Dustin already mentioned, right? There's a wide variety of additives which are used for a different set of properties. Well, I can envision that moving forward, we will absolutely also widen that range of concentrates that you can think about nucleating agents, but also reactive extrusion technologies, etc., to make sure that actually the PureCycle resins can be more widely used in a variety of different viscosity applications and melt impact applications, etc.
Yeah, I think that's very much the future of the relationship. But in the near term, I think that every time we run a different feed, or as we start to widen our basic footprint for product applications, we're going to be partnering very closely with Milliken to find the right additive package for our production as well. So there's a case to be made where our resin will go into Milliken to make a sustainable line of products, but there's also a case where Milliken's core products today will come into our system so we can make better product applications for our customers.
Well, a lot has definitely happened over the last 3 years. You went from basically a dream 3 years ago to a scaled up reality to launching a new concentrate today. But I'm going to open it up now to the floor. We have a few minutes left, so if anybody has any questions for our guests, now is your time to ask.
Hello, I'm David Eldridge from Compounding World. Could I ask you to talk a bit about the partnership with Aptar? And is that, at what stage are you with that? And is that indicative of the type of products that you think your PureCycle materials will go into? Is it targeting packaging or is it packaging plus?
Yeah, so if you look at where PureCycle started, we were born out of CPG. I mean, we are a Procter & Gamble family. And so really the intent was to find a solution that would help products like Procter & Gamble. The relationship with Aptar was developing over the last 3 to 5 years as well. And I would call them a very key close strategic. They are our preferred converter for plastic packaging. And they've been very helpful also on the technical side. Like Milliken, they're very deep technically, and they've helped us develop different products. With respect to, do I see that as where we will go with the majority of our production? I would say that 2 years ago, the answer to that would have been yes. But today, I would say the answer to that is no. The reality is that our product is equivalent to fossil-based polypropylene. So anywhere that polypropylene goes, so can go PureCycle. And so while we focused a lot on CPG type applications, packaging applications at the beginning, the reality is that that's not the limit for our product. We can go into automotive, we can go into ag, we can go into construction, we can go into carpet, we can go into, textiles, fill in the blank. We have to get the melt flow index right, which means you got to find the right feed to make the right product to move it in. But we for sure will not be limited to packaging. We can go much further and beyond that.
Okay.
And we're seeing a lot of traction along those lines for our Augusta project. Our Augusta project, we've got a suite of new customers that are coming in with that project, and many of those are outside of packaging.
Philipp Bittermann from Blastverarbeiter magazine. You mentioned working on FDA approval for direct food contact, which should be a great milestone for you. So when do you expect this to happen?
Yeah, so everybody's looking for like the moment that it happens. And the reality is that it won't be a moment, it'll be a partnership over time. We actually just received an L&O from the FDA a couple of months ago. We announced it in our last quarterly release to where we achieved L&O for certain applications and certain feedstocks. The goal going forward, in fact, I think even today, we are testing this at our FEU. The goal going forward is to widen the application base and also widen the feedstocks required for it. If you think about the process with the FDA, really, there was a lot of education that had to happen in both directions. We had to teach them who we were, how we worked, and they needed to teach us how the process worked. And together we needed to figure out how to make it work for polypropylene, because there really hasn't been a lot of processes, procedures built to do this type of qualification at the FDA. And in some ways, we're inventing that along the way. So I think that there's been a good base foundation laid with the FDA in terms of what do we need to do to broaden our qualifications, and then we have the asset in the United States with the pilot plant to where we can achieve that. So now it's just the work to do, to test it at the feedstock, and then to submit the samples, and then to get approval, and then to recycle around, and that just does not happen quickly. It takes time to get there. Good question.
Another question over here.
Yeah, hello, good morning. It's Mark Thomas from Chemical Week. Thank you for the information, it's really good. Are you able to give me any kind of breakdown from PureCycle's point of view in terms of the investment levels or the investments ballpark-wise required for the two US plants and what you're doing with Mitsui in Japan, I think it is, and SK in South Korea? Just some kind of indications for roughly what sort of investments we're looking at for the initial capacities, and also are you able to give me what the initial expected capacities are for each of the projects that you've mentioned today?
So the second question is a lot easier than the first question. The second question is what are the capacities that we're looking at? So when we built Ironton, it was 107 million pounds per year capacity, and that's after reliability utilization impacts are removed. Okay, so 107. And when we looked at expanding, we wanted to see what would be necessary to change about the process in order to expand within the limits of the base design. And so the way to think about it is we adjusted the edges of the design, and we were able to creep it to 130 million pounds. So right now, the two lines that we're building in Augusta are each 130 million pounds. The line that we're building at SK Geocentric will be 130 million pounds. And we anticipate that being the model going forward, because we see great benefit in copying and pasting the design as opposed to reinventing every time. With respect to cost per pound, it's been a very difficult last year and a half. And so the cost of the projects have been moving around quite a lot. 3 years ago when we built Ironton, it was pretty easy to get a guaranteed maximum price bid for building a facility like that because everybody knew what the prices of commodities would be. If you try to do that today, you're going to get, in many cases, absurd quotes because people just don't know where it's going to go. So I would say that in our stated documentation to the market, we anticipated getting to a $1.30 per pound CapEx per pound price. Now I'll say that that is not first line. That's after it gets averaged down, because in a location like Augusta, it's a complex where we have potentially 8 lines in Augusta. The first line will cost more because of utilities, roads, sewers, infrastructure, but every line after that will be less. So that was what we stated pre-SPAC, let's say pre-inflationary environment. For sure, it's gone up a little bit since then. To what level, I can't really give you a good number now. I'll say also that on the prep side, you really have to separate the technology to purify from the technology to prep. And we're starting to backward integrate into prep in a bit more holistic way in terms of sorting and washing. And so that capital requirement has a slightly different, if you pull that away, it has, because it's really a different business line. So anyway, the $1.30 to the $1.75, $2 per pound is probably a good range to work on. But quite frankly, when we think about SK, what we've done the last year and a half is built the rules of the road, built the framework for how we want to work together, and built a lot of trust. So I think that's going to be a good foundation. But what we've got to do now is figure out the most efficient way to build the facility. And so first steps out of the gate with SK will really be evaluating the overall project and seeing if there's ways that we can find opportunities to reduce the overall CapEx. And I think that we'll find good opportunities with SK. They're very good, they're very technical, and they've got a nice supply chain to tap into. So I think together we'll find some good solutions. I didn't answer your first question that well, but it's a very difficult environment right now to really nail down the CapEx per pound.
That's great, thank you. Could I ask Wim just to give a bit more information on the plans for this to be the start of a family of products? And in particular, I just want to make sure I understand, is this, the clarifier that we're talking about, the concentrate, is that sort of a like for like with an existing Milad product?
Right.
And is that the plan for the other ones that you launch in the future, that it's the only real change is that it's using PureCycle PP as a carrier?
So the answer to that is yes and no. So in an initial stage, yes, for sure, right? So the idea is that you start with the clarifying agents, because again, I think to my point earlier, like I think one of the biggest bottlenecks around recycling is around transparency, right? So we believe that by using a clarifying agent, we are going to be able to expand it to a wide variety of packaging applications in particular. But after that, yes, we're going to go into mainly nucleating agents, I would say, and then also reactive extrusion. And why reactive extrusion? Because some of these technologies could allow, for example, to reduce the melt flow rather than increase the melt flow. And as a result, for example, you could get into applications like thermoforming. Yeah. That being said, though, is as an additives company, we are, and actually my colleague at the back there, Scott Trenner, is also here if you want to further elaborate on that. We are actively working also around additive technologies which are bio-based. Now, there is still a lot of work to be done. So there's nothing really specific I can announce here, but we are actively doing some projects there. So obviously, as you can imagine, right, that would be a perfect fit then in a PureCycle resin as a concentrate.
I think it's important to remember when you're making fossil-based polypropylene, the feedstock is very stable. When you start working in the recycling world, by definition, the feedstock is not stable. It's variable. And so you can either control things on the front or you can control things on the back. And so the amount of work that you put into sorting the feed to make it different MFIs, different qualities, different characteristics, you could do that. Or you can partner and find technology through additive packages to where you can adjust the final product characteristics through additives. So the idea of raising or lowering the MFI through additive packages, look, that's highly desirable in a recycling world, because that means you need to put less work into the feedstock acquisition, feedstock sorting process. And so it really just becomes a balance on where do you put the effort to make the product best for the customer.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end of our press conference here. So before we go, I want to thank both Wim and Dustin for coming here and sharing all this information with us. Both of them will be available right after this press conference if you have additional questions. And as they mentioned, Scott's here too to talk about anything technical with Milliken. And they will also be at the Milliken booth later today. So lots of opportunities to speak with them more. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.